today's show. Today we will be talking about polio and why vaccination against polio is still important today, despite the fact that America has been polio-free since 1994. We will talk a little bit more about the importance of vaccination later on in the show. Today we have a very special guest, President Franklin Roosevelt. In fact, he has traveled to visit with us from the year 1944, a time when polio outbreaks were constantly occurring. President Roosevelt has also been affected by polio himself. Let's meet our special guest, shall we? Everyone, President Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Good evening, Ms. Faust.
Good evening, Mr. President. First off, Mr. President, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with polio?
Well, I was 39 years old when I contracted polio, and it was the year 1921. At the time, no one knew what caused polio or how to treat it. I was almost completely paralyzed for a time and never regained the use of my legs. I learned to walk again with crutches and braces.
Well, I can imagine life with polio must have been very difficult, Mr. President. I can also see you were in your wheelchair, which is a rare sight, I am told. Mr. President, could you tell us what life was like prior to the development of a polio vaccine?
Yes, at the time, polio showed no concern, no pity for the young. As many could see, polio struck with its most frequent and devastating force against children. I believed at the time that much of the future strength of America would depend upon the success we would achieve in combating this disease. As a result, I initiated massive research on the disease, and on my radio broadcast show, I often encourage listeners to make donations to National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis.
Well, that sounds very nice, Mr. President. It also sounds like polio really had a huge impact on your life. But as you probably don't know, your push for research on polio eventually led to the development of a vaccine in 1955 by Jonas Salk, and is still used today in the United States and many other countries. The World Health Organization set the target date for the global eradication of polio in the year 2000, and the Americas declared the elimination of polio in September of 1994, making the Americas the first World Health Organization region to meet the goal of polio eradication. Polio only remains endemic in 3 countries, which are Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Pakistan. But 4 countries in Europe, one being the Russian Federation, experienced wild polio virus outbreaks in 2010, and China in the Western Pacific region experienced an outbreak in 2011. The 3 endemic countries have also reestablished transmission of polio in 3 countries, including Angola, Chad, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which were previously polio-free. Several other countries in South Asia and West and Central Africa had ongoing outbreaks in 2011 and 2012 due to the importations of poliovirus. And as you can see on the map, this is Pakistan, Afghanistan at the top, and Nigeria. The red dots represent cases of polio that have come about in the past year since January 1st. This is why it is important to continue vaccinating against polio. Many countries that were once polio-free are now having outbreaks due to the lack of vaccination and the importation of the virus from travelers from other countries. If people continue to choose to not vaccinate themselves or their children against polio, then we could see the reemergence of polio in the United States and the Western Hemisphere again. This would be devastating to the thousands of children who are susceptible to polio due to the decreases in vaccination rates. Polio can manifest itself in many ways. Most individuals only experience a mild illness with flu-like symptoms. However, some individuals who contract polio become paralyzed when motor neurons become affected. If the motor neurons controlling the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles are affected, then respiratory paralysis can occur, which can lead to death if the individual is not placed on a respiratory machine. These are photographs of children that have been affected by polio. As you can see, they are all paralyzed in the legs, they have braces and crutches and can no longer walk. These are children in Sudan, and they are all paralyzed, and they also have braces, but they can't walk. So these are the manifestations of polio. And this is a child who has polio and was paralyzed, but as you can see, paralysis can also cause deformities, as you can see in her leg. Polio is a devastating disease, and without vaccination, you or your loved ones may be at risk. So follow your child's vaccination schedule and get your child vaccinated against polio today. Well, that's it for our today's show. Thank you to our special guest, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and thank you to our viewers for watching. I'm Brianna Faust, and this is the Vaccine Awareness Show. I'll see you next week for our show on meningitis and the importance of vaccination. Thank you for watching.